Welcome into the Beat Sessions, your place for all things music. I'm your host, Mitchell Weary. Let's talk about Sturgill Simpson, aka Johnny Blue Skies, and his new record, Passage du Desir. He released that on July 12th. This is Sturgill's 8th studio album, his first under the moniker of Johnny Blue Skies, and his follow-up to 2021's The Ballad of Dude and Juanita. I felt necessary to throw it back a few weeks, talk about this record. I got busy and wasn't able to talk about it, but the more I listen to it, the more I'm just in love with what Sturgill is doing on this record. And the idea of what an artist is and that identity has come up a lot recently on the channel. We've been talking about a lot of people that are trying to transcend the boxes that people try to put them in, so to speak. Talking about Post Malone, this new country record that he just put out, Taylor Swift's a big one. But I feel like any good artist is always trying to transcend labels that people like me and everybody else are trying to put on them. I try not to do it on the channel. I think for the sake of argument sometimes, or for simple classification, for just communicating what something might be like, it makes sense to a certain degree. But I love artists like Sturgill Simpson, where if you have eclectic taste in music, there's so much payoff as far as what he brings to the table, which is whatever he wants. And it's so brave, and it's there's no concern for what the listener wants or what they're going to like necessarily on his end. That's not to say that they don't, but it's so important when it comes to art. This is a guy that doesn't want to be put into a box. And I think the Grammy win for A Sailor's Guide to Earth is I think it's a big example of a kind of a random Grammy. I think a lot of people, it's a record that has country influences, no doubt. I think his sound in general has that great combination of country, Americana, and rock and roll. And we've seen it in so many great artists throughout the decades. The Eagles are a big one right off the bat that comes to mind. But his style, and I listen to that record, and I don't necessarily think it's a country record. I think it's definitely an alternative record with a lot of country influences, but to give it that Grammy was kind of interesting. And I think that on his end, I'd argue he felt that he spent a lot of time trying to transcend that label, trying to get outside of that, because there are a lot of people that hear country music and it's a dirty word and they don't want to listen to it. I think it's silly. I think it's foolish to just, again, ascribe one term to something and then write it off. And, there's definitely stories about him, dealing with substance abuse and having some problems at the time. And I would attribute a lot of that maybe to that stress of people labeling him and coming down on him just from that angle. This is a guy that does so much so well. Following up with Sound and Fury, he was nominated for a Grammy for Best Rock Album. So you make that turnaround, it's pretty wild. And to just watch what he's done ever since then, to his satisfaction and making quality music. The Ballad of Dude and Juanita, very concept driven, short as hell. It's like 27 minutes long. It's bluegrass record. Some might argue that the storytelling kind of outweighed his concern for the musical compositions that he put to play, because this is a guy that, talking about labels, I listened to A Sailor's Guide to Earth, and there's so many things that are comparable to Passage du Desir as far as, yes, big country influences, but there's the rock influences, but then there's a massive funk influence. And this guy, when he starts bringing some of these bass licks to work, past and present, the horn arrangements, the string arrangements, it doesn't matter what he's doing. His music has a lot of depth, and there's a lot of texture. There's a lot of layers to these compositions. And I think that this new record, Passage du Desir, you're going to hear it, everybody's saying, and I'm not going to argue with them. I think that they're right as far as writing music under a different moniker, but sounding more like he has in, almost a decade. And there's a lot of truth to that. Like I said, I won't argue with it. These compositions, I feel like they're capped by like two big tracks, Jupiter's Ferry, and then one for the road, kind of like your A side and your B side closers. Two big compositions, and this record has that classic feel. 8 songs. There's so many moments on these tracks where they jam out, take advantage of open space, and you get a really just quality 42 minutes of music. It's nice to hear the instrumental play on this record. I think it's probably one of the best elements of it. I think his voice is great. I love Sturgill, and I love his songwriting, his storytelling. The angles that he takes as a songwriter, as a storyteller, are great. But when he's just working the instrumental, I think that's this is some of the best moments on this particular record. Kicks off with Swamp of Sadness. I really love the accordion that fades in. You get kind of just that Italian restaurant feel. It's so signature, and it's something that he's using to a nice degree. I talk about that instrument on the channel quite a bit, and it's great to hear it so much in contemporary music these days. I always love a good composition when someone's using that instrument and putting it to work. I love the way that fades in, ushers in this country driven track. It's got simple bass, muted percussion. The chorus hits with nice electric guitar, and then you talk about depth of composition. There's just layers of organ that work in, giving it kind of a gospel feel, some pedal steel that works in. Just great energy to open up the record. Love the opener. If the Sun Never Rises Again is your second track. Electric riff. I really like the balance of just the modern drum set with world percussion. Another thing that's it's pretty much ubiquitous throughout this record. You're hearing it on most compositions, but it's a cool element. There's times where you get a back and forth between both styles of percussion, times when they're going at it together and creating nice layers. But it's one of my favorite elements of this record as well. It's an interesting song too. It's funky, it's smooth, talking about that feeling. It's got that vibey 70s soft yacht rock feel to it, no doubt. And this is a record that for 8 songs, there's really quite a lot going on here. I'd say maybe in a way you're getting maybe equal parts Sound and Fury and Sailor's Guide to Earth. It's there, but there are moments where there is a tiny bit of bluegrass, tiny bit of Americana, but I might argue that this record is bringing both of those records together and finding that balance, and for the difference in the compositions, they really do come together well. I think that's what struck me the most is seeing that variation in the music, but knowing that it is just it feels like signature Sturgill Simpson. Love it. Scooter Blues is your third track. Acoustic riff to open, nice groovy track. It's equal parts country, rock, and funk. Just a great honky-tonk feel, something that you could certainly dance to. And then it's got even like a little bit of that Parrot Head vibe. Lyrically as well, there's just that idea of just wanting life to be laid back. And no doubt that there's a little bit of a guy like Jimmy Buffett at influence in this kind of song. Jupiter's Ferry, your fourth track, closing out your first side. Gorgeous organ intro, strong feeling of grief, and the lyrics certainly support that. It's simple world percussion to open up this thing, but piano builds behind it, and I really enjoyed the way that the chorus swells. Strings really just big, and then a big vocal melody as well. But lots of instrumental movement in this song. Just a really great example of nuance and building a track, and a big one as well. This thing it comes in roughly around like 7 minutes. Very pretty piano in the coda as well. You're gonna kick off your opposite side with Who I Am. Acoustic guitar, big warm country vocal to open. I really enjoyed just that melody and the feel in his voice there. Simple bass and drum, got that pedal steel that works in to build towards the hook. And then it duels. Like I really like the duel between the electric guitar, the pedal steel that's at play here. That's a fun part of the song, and it just it's a great way to kick off the second half. It's got great energy. Your sixth song, Right Kind of Dream, twinkly piano, driving bass and drums to open up this thing. This song has almost kind of like a new wave feel to it. pretty fascinating. Really nice character, very unique. As far as standing out from the rest of these songs in that regard. But it keeps you on your toes with that energy. Pretty little bridge with some very nice strings. I love that arrangement there. And then I really just enjoyed the way that those, the presence that the strings had in the song, and the way that they just basically take the coda away and finish this track off. Mint Tea is your penultimate track. Simple drums and acoustic guitar to open. All the good stuff works in to build in on this really chill mid-tempo country tune. And then I love the coda. Takes a really nice turn talking about that, just that rapid guitar, that Italian restaurant kind of feel. That and it's a cool way to open up into One for the Road. There's a really nice transition in the tracks there. And then One for the Road, the strings that kind of build off the end of Mint Tea, they're very ominous, very cinematic in a way. Almost kind of made me think of the Death of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford. If you ever saw that movie, like, the cinematography is amazing, but the music, I think, is what made those scenes so incredible as well. It reminded me a lot of that. But then the guitars take a turn in this track that's very interesting. A lighter feel, honky-tonk rock track, big strings that are working in the chorus, and they work into the second verse as well, and then just really kind of like do their thing throughout the track. But this song, another big one, closing it out, it floats into this just intoxicating jam. And that's what I'm talking about as far as, Sturgill lyrically. I think he does a fine job no matter what we're dealing with. We could talk about just about any record. And I'd say he shows up from that standpoint. But the jams on this record, that just free-form looseness, really, I found it to be so captivating and to be one of the best things about this record. This is it's something that many of you, you've probably heard it, but if you haven't checked out this record, give this thing a listen to. It is a beautiful project. It's well done by him. Some people even arguing it's probably the best thing that he's done since Sound and Fury. He's put out, it's a short period of time, 5 years, a lot of stuff there. And again, there's the Cut and Grass series, which reworking compositions. I think I'd argued in my previous review of the Ballad of Dude and Juanita that there's still effort that goes into that. Reworking a composition still is it requires a lot of thought and a lot of effort. But this record, check it out. I'm gonna give this thing a 7.8 out of 10. Sturgill Simpson, aka Johnny Blue Skies, and who's to see what other alter egos he shows up with in the future. But hope you enjoy this album and hope you find this review helpful. Please like this video, share it, subscribe to the channel, do all the things to help me blow this project up in 2024, and stay tuned throughout the week for more album reviews. We will see you next time on the Beat Sessions.